Still some seats in the middle if anybody wants to move in and be a little cozier. Welcome. I'm Sandy Sweitzer. I'm the Executive Director at the Triangle Land Conservancy, and I am really glad that y'all could join us this evening. The irony of the rain is not lost on us, or coincidence, or it's perfect, right? So I'm going to introduce our panelists one by one when it's time for them to speak, but first, I wanted to thank our sponsors. The Blue Cross Blue Shield is our platinum sponsor for the series this year, and Green Planet Catering is providing the food, which I think you'll really enjoy. It will be out there after the program. And Harris Beverages is donated the beer for tonight, and we are really grateful to them for that and for the diversity of beers that they provided. As someone mentioned earlier, you can't have good beer without good clean water, so it's a perfect match. I also wanted to thank the Wells Fargo Foundation. They've been really supportive of us this year, and although there's no one here and they didn't exactly sponsor this, I just have to give a shout out to them. They've been really helpful to us. And I also wanted to recognize board members. I think there's only one current board member here, and that is John McAdams, our board chair, who, there he is, John in the back. John is also in this picture with his sweet dog, Chessie, the black lab. And I also want to thank the TLC staff, and a few of them are here. Many of them you'll see out front. Meredith is here, Leanne, Laura, Diana, out there, Bo, Walt, Kyle, Matt, Clea. I think I got everyone. And as you'll see from tonight, they work really hard. They also have a lot of fun, and I am really honored that I get to work with them. We have a good time doing really good work at TLC. Finally, I want to thank the utilities and other expo participants, Eno River Association, Ellerby Creek Association, and the Upper Neuse Clean Water Initiative folks are all out there, and there will be a few more people after the event, so continue to get good materials and ask questions and learn as much as you can. When I first got into water conservation, I didn't really understand the connection between land conservation and water protection. And in the past few years, I've really learned a lot. You know, we all know about the Neuse River, Cape Fear, the big ones, the Ha River. But there are hundreds of creeks like the New Hope Creek, Stony Creek, Ellerby, that all feed into our water supply. And that doesn't even mention all of the little streams and wetlands that are really important, that are protected by the land across the way. As you'll hear tonight, natural landscapes protect the water quality by reducing soil erosion, sedimentation, and pollution, and they also help protect our water quality. Land conservation is one part of the solution, and other folks will talk both up here and out at the expo about other ways that you can help with water quality. And I'm really proud to be part of the Triangle Land Conservancy and part of the history, the 30-year history of doing this awesome work in the region. I want to tell you a story about one of TLC's newest preserves. First, you might want to close your eyes and just imagine being outside on a beautiful fall day, a peaceful pond, a lively wetland, bustling with life, maybe the crumbling remains of an old house, listening to the birds calling, and maybe even getting to hear a beaver building his lodge on the creek nearby. Now, instead, imagine that you're standing in a subdivision with neat and tidy lawns and streets, and that could have been the story of Brumley Forest Nature Preserve, which is in Orange County. It's a 613-acre preserve, and in the 1990s, a subdivision was planned for a section of the property off of New Hope Road. George and Julia Brumley purchased the land. They lived nearby, and they really loved the open space. They purchased it sort of to be their own playground for a long time. George was on the board of TLC, and so they were really interested in conservation, forestry, farming, and hunting. Unfortunately, as some of you may know, George and Julia and their children and his parents and actually a total of 12 people and their family were killed in a tragic plane accident in 2003. And after several years, Triangle Land Conservancy decided to purchase the land and worked with the Zeiss Family Foundation to protect it along with a lot of partners. Part of the reason for that is that there were a lot of beautiful natural habitats on the land, and also it would help safeguard the water in the Neuse Rivershed. And that is the source of drinking water for Raleigh. And I really feel like this project in particular highlights the importance of the regional nature of Triangle Land Conservancy's work. So the funding came from the Clean Water Management Trust Fund, the Warner Foundation, the City of Raleigh, the Upper Neuse Clean Water Initiative, and donors to the Triangle Land Conservancy's Our Water, Our Land campaign. And right now we're working on a plan to open the preserve to the public in the fall. This is a copy of the plan. It's also out there if you want to look at it. There will be about 12 miles of hiking trails and multi-use trails, and it's just a gorgeous piece of property. And actually last week the trail building began, and this is what it looked like. And this is what it looks like when they're getting close to done. So this is just one example of TLC's conservation work, specifically as it relates to tonight's topic, which is clean water. And in total, Triangle Land Conservancy has protected over 17,000 acres of land across the triangle. You can see our priority areas in this map, as well as the preserves that we have that are open to the public are in yellow. The two preserves that are future open to the public are in blue. And the pink ones are places that TLC was instrumental in helping protect that are managed by other people now. Each of these preserves has an amazing story behind it, and I would love to tell you all of them, but I'm going to instead turn to our speakers. Like I said, I will introduce each one of them, and they'll give their presentation. At the very end, we'll have time for questions and answers. So again, welcome all of you, and thank you so much. I'm going to switch over here so that the first speaker can get his thingy up. So Mike Schlegel, hear me? Is this on? Yes, okay. Mike is a trained facilitator working on regional collaboration around water resources in the Greater Triangle region. He works at the Triangle J Council of Governments Water Resources Manager. He has a master's in watershed science from Colorado State and is a fellow of the Natural Resources Leadership Institute and Leadership Triangle. Mike led the collaborative development of the Triangle Regional Water Supply Plan, an award-winning effort to jointly plan for sustainable and secure water supplies in the Triangle through 2016. This partnership, as you might imagine, serves as a national model of collaboration and joint regional water supply planning. Mike makes his home in Raleigh with his smart wife and 3 adorable and brilliant daughters. His white princess name is Muddy Waters, and he's a visual thinker who loves watersheds. We're really glad to have you here, Mike, and thanks so much for coming.
Thank you. I don't know if they told you, the format for this is 20 slides for 20 seconds each, so this should be fun. All right, hello, good evening. My name is Mike Schlegel, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be here. First and foremost, I want to thank each of you for coming out tonight, and thanks to the Triangle Land Conservancy for this opportunity to come out and talk with you about good things happening in the region, about the future of water resources. I work as the Water Resources Program Manager at Triangle J Council of Governments, and we are one of the 16 regional councils in North Carolina, which are divided on county boundaries. And here in the Triangle, we have a 7-county region called Region J. So welcome to Region J. This is a map of our region, and we are a voluntary organization. Our members are the cities and counties. So we are the safe place where local governments come to work together on issues that are larger than any one jurisdiction. Our mission in life is regional collaboration. Within the Water Resources Program, we're working for three main things. We're working for reliable water supplies, good water quality, and resilient communities. And we're doing that by helping people work together and recognize that we all have a role to play in water resources. And what we do impacts the water. Something as simple as fertilizer, when it gets into the water, can cause massive algae blooms, like this photo in the upper part of Falls Lake from a few years ago. And the problem is when the algae dies and decomposes, it can use up all the oxygen in the water and kill all the fish. And that's not good. You see, within a watershed, all things are connected. Watersheds are everywhere, and every drop of rain that falls runs across the land or seeps through the ground and eventually makes it to our streams and wetlands and lakes. So what we do on the land impacts the water. In 2007, we had the second historic drought within a 10-year period. And what you may not know is that all of our public water supplies here in the Triangle, the water that comes out of the tap when you turn it on, are all surface waters. They come from rivers and lakes and reservoirs. And so we are potentially susceptible to drought. We really rely on rainfall like we have today to fill up our lakes and streams. So you'll see me smiling when it's raining out there. After the 2007 and 2008 droughts, the public water utilities in the Triangle realized that we're in this together. And the 13 water providers, which are shown here on this map with their service areas, decided to come together and form the Jordan Lake Partnership. The purpose of the Jordan Lake Partnership is to plan for the secure and sustainable water supplies for the future of the Triangle region. They're looking out through 2060, and they have a great mantra: running out of water is not an option. The first 2 years of their efforts were really about figuring out how much water are we going to need for the future. And that meant taking the time to understand and critique each other's methodologies. And that detailed level of peer review really improved the estimates for future water demand, both individually and as a region. We are growing as a region. In 2010, when this effort started, we had about 1 million people between these 13 water utilities. And by 2060, that is estimated to nearly triple to about 2.8 million people within that same geographic area. And from a water supply perspective, we use about 100 million gallons per day of water across the region. We have about 200 million gallons in our current supplies, but if you look by 2060, we're going to need almost 300 million gallons of water every day to meet the future needs of our region. So after 2 years of effort, the partnership realized that we are facing a 95 million gallon per day problem. And that water shortage could begin as soon as 2030 if we don't do anything about it. One of the really fortunate things in the Triangle is that our water systems are very well interconnected. And that gives us a whole series of options that we wouldn't have had otherwise. We can move water around the region if needed. And for the partnership's perspective, that meant we have some additional options to meet that future water supplies, some creative ways to fill that 95 million gallon per day problem. This schematic just shows the process that the partnership went through. In fact, they developed almost 15 different alternatives that would meet the future water supply need, that would meet that 95 million gallon per day shortfall. And they ultimately refined and chose one preferred regional alternative, which is shown on this map. The blue dots represent the existing water supplies, and the size of the dot shows how much water they give. So the biggest dots are Falls Lake and Jordan Lake. The red dots represent the preferred future water supplies. The partnership represents an historic consensus on the future water supply needs and for how to meet that future water supply. It is serving as a national model and is really picking up momentum, but now the hard work begins to implement that future water supply plan. So the days of every man for themselves are over. We have learned that we need to work together, and when it comes to water resources, we are all in it together. You can take it from the Sod Father, who is our newest spokesperson for clean water, and I encourage you to go on YouTube and check out the Sod Father video. So thank you for the opportunity to be here and to talk to you about water supply in the town.
That's great. Thank you so much. Yeah, I forgot to tell you that we have this really onerous way that we're asking people to talk. The was 20 slides, 5 minutes or something?
20 seconds each.
20 seconds each. And so the slides keep going and they just have to keep talking, and it's a lot harder than what I got to do. We'll just say that. So Laura, do you want to come up and I'll introduce you while you get set up? Laura is, are we on here? Yeah. Laura Taylor is the director of the Center for Environmental and Resource Economic Policy and a professor in the Department of Agricultural and Resource Economics at NC State, where she teaches undergraduate and graduate courses at the NC State Environmental, at NC State. Sorry.
I might have written it.
Her research focuses on evaluating the effectiveness of environmental policies and on the valuation of natural assets. Recently, Laura has served as a member of the Science Advisory Board for the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the NCC Grant Advisory Board, and the North Carolina Legislative Research Commission Advisory Subcommittee on Offshore Energy Exploration. It's a mouthful. Laura is a North Carolina native and received degrees in economics from UNC Asheville, Duke, and NC State, where she received her doctorate. Please join me in welcoming Laura Taylor.
Thank you. Thanks.
Is that thing working okay?
Yep. It's hard for me to say my name in 20 seconds, much less something that's on a slide, so we'll see how I do with this. This is my first time in this format mode. Let me get it started. So good evening, I'm Laura Taylor, and I work at North Carolina State University and direct the Center for Environmental Resource Economic Policy. I'm going to speak with you this evening about water quality, focusing on urbanizing watersheds, and highlight a couple of the research projects we've done and some of the implications for them. And as we just heard, one of the major issues with water quality in the region, and indeed throughout the Southeast and in many areas of the country, comes from excess nutrient loading, excess phosphorus and nitrogen that runs into the lakes through streams, causes algae blooms, and is harmful to fish and wildlife, and also can be harmful to human health. I'm going to first focus on Falls Lake in the upper left-hand corner, but the issues are the same with Jordan Lake, and then I'm going to move from the lake back to the streams and talk about some of the water quality issues. Both Falls and Jordan Lake do not meet federal water quality standards. If you can see on these on the slide, the red areas are indicating the areas where they are not in compliance, do not meet federal water standards for their uses. And there's some photos of the outcomes of the algae, and these are all in the state of North Carolina, the upper ones in Falls, and then there's a close-up. So what are the culprits? What seems to be a surprise to many people is that one of the biggest culprits is the runoff from your homes. When the rainwater falls on your roofs and on our driveways and indeed our lawns and runs off into the gutters and eventually into the streams, carrying with it nitrogen and phosphorus and pollutants. Other culprits include, of course, developed land or land that is in development where we have removed natural forests, agricultural runoff, and direct runoff from wastewater treatment or sewage outflows, and often during storm events where we're adding more nitrogen and phosphorus to the system. In response to the Falls Lake water quality issues, in 2010, the Department of Environmental Quality proposed rules to achieve full restoration of the lake in 25 years, which would require substantial reductions in both phosphorus and nitrogen, 40 and 77%, with large costs, over $1 billion in costs. So why do it? Of course, for improving our habitat. But other reasons around these areas. The water quality supports the habitat, and it supports drinking water supplies for about 800,000 individuals, about 450,000 from Falls Lake and the remainder from Jordan Lake. And it is more expensive to treat dirtier water. It's a more intensive process. Another important reason to do it, another important economic reason to do it, is that these areas provide substantial recreational benefits, boating, fishing, and so forth. Enhanced water quality directly leads to two things: both more visitors visit the lake and their experience is enhanced. These lakes combined, Falls and Jordan, have about 2.5 million visitations each year. A recent study by a colleague of mine in the center estimated, well, for that fiscal note that was associated with the Falls rule, that fully restoring Falls Lake alone, by the time it was fully restored, would add an additional $200 million in annual benefits to the recreation at that site. Just recreational benefits in 1 year for a fully restored lake, and that's an additional $200 million. But how do you clean up the lakes? You have to clean up the streams. These are streams in Wake County that are impaired, do not meet their federal water standards for their designated uses. You can see there's not too much blue in that area. And that's pretty typical for an urbanized area. And again, what's the culprit? Stormwater. Too much, running too fast, which is causing the erosion. You can see the photo. That's Black Creek, by the way, which runs through Cary, and carrying the nutrients and pollutants with it into the streams and then eventually into the lake. So what can individuals do? What we want to do is disconnect our homes and the source of the stormwater from these creeks. And you can see in urbanized watersheds, these developments go right up there. That light blue line is Black Creek and Cary. And it's very important to disconnect the stormwater from the creek. How can we do that? Rain barrels capture roof rainwater. Market prices are important. I'm going to show you that why in just a second. Other things we can do are conservation plantings and rain gardens, removing the sod. Most sod, at least in developments, is very hard compacted soil. When rain is hitting it, it's not seeping in, it is sheeting off. So these conservation plantings, again, can slow down the progress of that rainwater and allow it to infiltrate into the soil. We did a survey of homeowners in town of Cary to see what their willingness was to implement or be part of this solution. And unfortunately, what the survey results showed was that homeowners, and these are wealthy homeowners, would require subsidies of 65 to up to 90% of the cost of doing these things in order to install them. They weren't very popular. However, on the bright side, what they were willing to do is fund public investments in constructed wetlands. This is one along the Black Creek Greenway. And they were willing to pay about 6% of their average monthly bill. And if you're in the utility business, what's interesting, and that's about an average stormwater utility fee. And we had big buy-in on that. But there's a hitch. There's not enough public land typically available to fully restore a lot of these creeks. So even if we could fully fund them, we just can't access the kinds of land that we need. Homeowners have to be involved. So it's a multi-stakeholder, so what I'm going to leave you with in my last slide in 20 seconds, there it is that it's a multi-stakeholder approach that we need to take. Homeowners have to be involved, working with our utilities, commercial and agricultural stakeholders. And importantly, the regulators have to be at the table. Falls Lake and Jordan Lake rules, well, we can talk about that at the break and where those stand today. Thank you.
This is great. Thank you so much. So Dale is next. I'm really pleased to introduce Dale Threatt-Taylor. Dale served on Triangle Land Conservancy's board for 9 years until 2013, which was unfortunately right about the time that I came, and I am still hoping to get her back on our board. In her day job, Dale is the director of the Wake Soil and Water Conservation District and the Wake County Soil and Water Conservation Department. She received a bachelor's in science in conservation from NC State in 1991 and a master's in environmental management from Duke in 2011. In 2012, Dale was selected as one of 30 agriculturalists in the state to participate in the Agricultural Leadership Development Program at NC State. She's president of the North Carolina Hugh Hammond Bennett chapter of the Soil and Water Conservation Society. She currently serves on the Conservation Trust for North Carolina Board of Directors and is vice chair of the City of Oaks Foundation Board of Trustees. You'll get this in a minute. Dale has a lot of energy. In January 2015, she was re-elected president of the Wake County Agribusiness Council. And Dale wants everyone in the city, county, state, and nation to understand that locally led conservation begins with an individual and that conservation matters to all of us. Welcome, Dale.
Thank you. All that means is I don't have a life. We're gonna roll. I'm gonna do something a little different. Okay. Forgive me for what I'm about to do to the English language. I'm a science person by profession, and I have no business in the written world. Soil and water conservation districts were formed in 1937, and they've delivered us from the worst man-made natural disaster. You would note on each of the sides there's a blue arrow because this is all about water. In the beginning, we tilled the land until it cried. We tilled it until it died. Wind erosion across our bread basket left our can blowing in the wind. But back east, here in North Carolina, it was water erosion from constant till, with mules going back and forth, plowing up and down the hill. It left our land devastated. Water erosion scarred our lands and robbed the fields of all its valuable topsoil. Such sad lines. Soon, a new movement, a hero we call soil conservation, would draw lines, new lines on the land. A movement born in Anson County, North Carolina, by the father of soil conservation, Dr. Hugh Hammond Bennett. Now, both water quality and flood control could be improved by man. This new thing called Soil and Water Conservation Districts grew strong over the years, a partnership between federal, state, and local peers. And very nearby, there happens to be one of the best. Wake is one of 3,000 districts placed all over the U.S. A district is drawn by county lines, but if you're not careful, you'll miss it every time. For you see, if you don't go, for you see the conservation on the ground, you must exit the old belt line and go south and east of town. Water quality is very important to us. In the field, it's our mission and our focus. Before we head out of the office to try to do some good, we remember that there is a stream in every grove of woods. Clean streams need to stay that way. That's our goal at the end of each workday. To keep those streams clear and clean, we began by evaluating natural resources problems for our design work. It's an engineer's dream. Stop the erosion, push and pile the dirt. That's one of our methods of work. Oh, but how we prefer agronomy. Plant the seed, let roots hold the soil in place. It's the most economical conservation method indeed. Cover crops and vegetative practices allow the water to infiltrate deep down so that pure, clean water flows from the fountains way back in town. Districts work in nutrient management. Some of you call it poop. Comes from a large number of horses and cows and even those backyard chicken coops. Our best management practice help us manage the nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus that others call waste. Our fencing, dry stacks, and heavy use areas help us contain nutrients in just the right place. Without pasture management, we find eroded and damaged stream banks that must be repaired. For the health of aquatic life and ecosystems are at stake where the streams are so impaired. This stream crossing project is in the watershed of Falls Lake, but now the much cleaner water flows into the drinking water source for most of the citizens of Wake. Environmental education is important for every generation to come. Understanding watersheds should be everyone's rule of thumb. So why are these girls digging through these cow patties that as though someone dropped their iPhone? They're looking for dung beetles and learning about soil quality. These future scientists did it without a single groan or moan. Pictures cannot do justice to the steep slopes and erosion challenges on this farm. Just know that the conservationists work hard to install water lines, roof runoff management, vegetation and diversions to make sure the pond back there will feel no harm. Soil and water conservation districts continue the practice of installing lines on the lands even in this day. For conservation work usually combines multiple practices like strip cropping and grass waterways to keep erosion at bay. This pasture was on an old eroded tobacco field back in the day, but now the soil quality is excellent, even though the goats only care about the hay. In the before picture, note the eroded and channelized stream bombed by the constant delivery of nutrients. Oh, and there they go downstream. But after the photo shows ripples, pools, and meandering of a repaired stream where clean water flows. Sometimes stream restoration projects are debated by scholars, but with a permanent easement that forever excludes these beautiful beasts, it seems like a good use of dollars. How important is water quality to our local foods? How important is water quality to our farms? Just reverse the question and ask, how important is the local foods to our quality of life, wildlife habitat, and our natural areas? Wake District celebrates our 50th anniversary this year. We help a variety of landowners of crop, livestock, vegetables, and hayland. We even hold permanent easements to ensure that future generations will see some of these preserved farms in sensitive watersheds and uplands. Our work is not done. For every season, decisions must be made where they choose to plow or choose our favorite practice of no-till. Here's a hint. Every soil conservationist in every district from the Atlantic to the Pacific, oh, we love to see thick residue on the ground. It is the best thrill. I hope you know that districts have been around for a long time. Working in a voluntary, nonpartisan, and being non-regulatory, we walk a thin line. But we simply love what we do all day, every day, and with the help of the divine, districts will keep on saving soil till the end of time. Now, you are part of a district, and if you live in Wake, I hope you will join us and be our kin, for we started the first for a soil and water conservation district in the nation, a group called Friends. If you need more information, you just call the office or my cell. I'm at the end of my presentation, as you can tell. And if you need some ibuprofen, you can blame Dale.
Oh, you can see why I want her back on our board. I am the last speaker today. That was a good segue. Is Tony Reevy. Tony is the Senior Associate Director of the Institute for the Environment at UNC Chapel Hill. He's a graduate of NC State and of UNC Chapel Hill and Miami University. Tony is also the David P. Morgan Award winner and a Pushcart Prize nominee. His previous publications include poetry, nonfiction, and short fiction, including the nonfiction books Ghost Train and O. Winston Link, Life Along the Line, the poetry chapbooks Green Cove Stop, Magdalena, Lightning in Wartime, and In the Mountain Lion Country, and the poetry book Old North. His 2015 releases are Passage, poetry published by Iris Press, and The Railroad Photography of Jack Delano by Indiana University Press. If you want to hear more of his work after this, you can catch him at UNC's Bull's Head Bookshop on November 19th and at the Regulator in Durham on November 24th. Tony resides in Durham with his wife, Carolyn Weaver, and their children, Lindley and Ian. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Sandy, and it's great to follow some poetry that was unexpected, but great. It was rhymed, so. Bodies of water, especially our great rivers, are very important to me and to my work as a poet. By the time I was 14, I had lived in 7 places: Texas, Virginia, New York, New Mexico, New York, Virginia, and of course, North Carolina. The first great river I remember is the Rio Grande, a river of immense significance, a center of folklore, an international boundary, a lasting inspiration to songwriters, to poets such as Rodolfo Anaya and Jimmy Santiago Baca, and to many other artists. In Stalking Asparagus Officinalis, poem, of course, I said, "The loud voice behind us is water in the irrigation canal. It grinds up kids," Mom says, and spits them out downstream. The Rio Grande beyond is a great sandbox, playground of snakes and coyotes. The next great river is the Hudson. In First Week in Troy, I describe it in the 1970s before the Clean Water Act took hold. A cold wind blows down the Hudson. This is before the fish came back. After New York, my family moved to Southside, Virginia, and I lived in a development along the James, 2 miles east of Hopewell, Virginia. I mention the location so exactly because this was in the mid-1970s when Life Science Products, anyone remember this, made Keepone there. In Keepone days, I recall this time. While we splashed, played, men labored in the old filling station, which Allied Chemicals said it didn't own, and the plume spread downstream towards us. Finally, in 1976, my family moved to Durham, and Durham became my hometown. While I was in high school, we lived up Roxborough Road from West Point on the Eno. We volunteered at the folklife festivals held there, the ancestors of today's Festival for the Eno. Since moving back to Durham in 1994, I have hiked an Eno River State Park trail, usually the Pump Station Trail, every Saturday and Sunday that I'm home. I'm not the only writer or artist who does something like this. Jim Applewhite from Duke is another example. I've seen the Eno in its many moods and have encountered it in many moods of my own. As most of you know, the Pump Station Trail has been in the path of a proposed northern bypass around Durham. I wrote about this many years ago in the poem Eno Bank. The laurels stand, green, rare, bloom each June, hug the same North Slope land. Change plans halted roadwork, saved the still small cove. A tiny victory for what was, is, over what mostly shall be. In 1998, I hiked the Pump House Trail after a friend's death at an early age, an event that led me to work in the environmental arena. In a poem, Eno River Hike, 3 weeks after the death of a friend, I wrote about this difficult time. I turn the bend and hike along the river. Slow, time to think. Suddenly, thunder, deep, rolling, like a night phone call bringing bad news. The breeze stills. I quicken my pace, lose my thoughts. Now I see the whitened tree like polished bone, a deadfall rotting 2 years and waiting to tumble. I mentioned the Eno's moods. The deadfall I saw in 1998 was a tree killed by Hurricane Fran. The Eno is usually a placid river, but it can be angry, especially after a great storm like Fran, or even following heavy rains like those earlier this month. In Hurricane Wood, from my book Old North, I talk about the forest at another Eno River State Park trail, the Cabelands Trail, after Fran. The Cabelands area with its abandoned cemetery is haunted by memories. Tornadoes snap trees off even. Hurricanes blow them sharply down, all pointing leeward, ground battle-pocked like old photos of the Somme. The Eno and the Flat, the Little and the Neuse are important for more than beauty and nature. Durham, for example, drinks from these rivers. Lake Mickey is on the Flat, and Little River Lake is on the Little River. As we grow, we need to remember that there are always difficult trade-offs. One that often occurs is between open space and impoundments. In At the Little River Trail, another poem, I talk about conserved land, much like the area that's now under Little River Lake. A quick shape with legs, a long tail hears my tread, dives to safety. Mink, otter, tremendous salamander. I trample this trail, but little I know, so little I know, of what lies beside and around it. Thank you for being here today to support land conservation and the environment, and thank you to the Triangle Land Conservancy for inviting me to speak and for helping to protect the open spaces we all share and love. Thank you.
So I'm going to now invite all the speakers to come up onto the stage, and we are going to open this to question. Before we do that, as they're coming up, I would love to give everybody a round of applause. I thought that was really great presentation. Hey, I asked my guys to put it up there because it was really barren up here before. Sorry. So I would like to invite anyone have a question or comment that you want to make. Mm-hmm.
Oh, don't really want to spend the money to do some of these rainwater catch things. Can you talk with us a little bit about sort of how much something like that costs, and if there are any initiatives to help people with any kind of a tax credit or any kind of an incentive?
Yeah,
That's handy. I'm right here. Yeah, so in the town of Cary is the median household income in the town of Cary is something like $70,000, $85,000. So it's really high income town. And we surveyed residents in the Black Creek watershed and told them about the issues with Black Creek, how it's impaired. Only about 50% were aware that it was impaired. So then we told them about it and talked about ways that they could affect the outcomes. And so rain barrels, we offered, the way in which we expressed the questions were we were offering a program to them in which they would get a subsidized installation for a rain garden or conservation planning. And so by asking many different people and varying the prices that that might cost you out of pocket $200, and in a different survey it might cost them $600 and so forth, we can gauge where folks are on average willing to pay. And so for a 10 by 10 foot planting, I think it generally would cost maybe $600. It was sort of $600 to $1,200 it could be, depending on what plants you use and how you do it all. And we saw willingness to pay for those of being about half that, maybe a little bit less. Maybe willingness to pay would be sort of 40%. So, and there's a lot that goes into it because you do have to then maintain them, and they worry about extra work and that sort of thing. Rain barrels, basically had to give them away. Nobody was interested in the rain barrels, and that was a 90% subsidy, so basically free.
So are there any programs existing?
Yeah. So, well, in the Black Creek watershed, WECO, formerly Watershed Education for Communities and Officials, I think it is, was doing a partnership with homeowners to help them install. But I'm only aware of sort of these one-off partnerships. I don't know if you're aware of any large, but there's not like state tax credits or anything like that. And I'm not aware of utilities having programs.
We actually have a program in the soil and water conservation districts across the state. North Carolina has a cost share program to help get these BMPs installed on ag land. But we also have a community conservation assistance program. It's called CCAP to do that very thing. Now, we don't really do rain barrels, but the water gardens, the rain gardens, stormwater runoff for homeowners, and some stream restoration. Here's the problem. Go ahead and tell them.
Oh, I was just going to say, but to check your local utility, if you're in town of Cary, because I was thinking about, actually, town of Cary was giving away rain barrels for a while. And so if you check on your utility website, they ought to have their programs if they have them. Go ahead.
The problem we have, they give us $4,000. That'll do what, two?
Yeah.
Come on, we have a waiting list like crazy. So talk to your legislators about giving us some more, and those of us who are urban counties, us, Winston-Salem, New Hanover, Guilford, we want a little bit more, whereas some of the rural counties don't necessarily need CCAP. But Wake needs it a lot. Would love to work with you.
Jack?
I also have a question for Laura. You mentioned the importance of cleaning up streams in order to clean up lakes. So do you think there's any chance that the reactive project for the solar aerators in Jordan Lake can have any positive effect at all?
It's Joanne Burkholder in the room. I am not a water quality scientist. I'm an economist, so I will. Some of my colleagues at NC State are not too enthusiastic about that. And more importantly, or let me put it in the broader context, more importantly, so that is putting a Band-Aid at the end, and it's not fixing many different problems in the upstream. And with increased urbanization and growth in the watershed, if you don't have the regulations and the rules in place to improve stormwater management throughout the watershed, I'm not sure there's going to be enough bees. There won't be any room for boats because there'll be so many bees in the water. But most of my colleagues do not seem to be very hopeful about that.
There's a question over there.
The guy that builds the solar bees, he's written in the News and Observer 2 or 3 times saying that his solar bees can't do it alone. They have to have a nutrient management program. And I don't like the solar bees. I get out there real early in the morning sometimes to count eagles, and it industrializes the lake. You've got all this equipment floating around with their little lights, distracts from the nature.
I saw some other hands earlier.
My question is about the rain barrels. You mentioned stormwater. It seems like a rain barrel isn't going to store very much stormwater.
Yeah, so, depending on the size of your roof and your gutters and the size of the rain barrel, there's a couple important things about rain barrels. And I'm a culprit of this. I've installed them and then I don't drain them. And so then it rains and they just flow over. And so the idea is that they're harvesting the rainwater on the roof for you to then later put down. And if they're appropriately sized, they won't catch it for all rain events, but they can mitigate the runoff.
They can be designed with a small.
Right, when they're full and.
Which is what I have.
Yeah.
It seems like the fundamental issue with all the red that you showed on your map and all the watersheds, and the chart that you showed of population growth in the region, that you don't have any room to restore those streams. There's not enough land left, you said. And population is skyrocketing. Are there any plans in these counties to start to think about limiting growth, maybe? Having an environmental, social, population, a comprehensive plan for maintaining the natural, amenities of our towns, including fresh water to drink for the people who live here.
wants to answer that?
Not me. You're the coordinator. Triangle J can go.
Well, it's a great question. And, you know, personally, there's a balance between struggling with leverage the growth to how it is working on revenues for water bills to then we've certainly seen through the Triangle Land partnership how one utility doing something really good positive peer pressure effect that other utilities seem to.
That's great. Is there a hand up in the back?
Yeah, this is a follow-up question. I was wondering if I could get some commentary, and hopefully some of you will be willing to speak outside your areas of expertise, maybe a little bit of philosophical insight on Chatham Park. And the reason I'm asking is I've followed it as best I could in the papers, and I've actually been down. I was down at the final town council meeting of the town of Pittsburgh, where they gave it all away. They gave it away. So 22,000 houses, 8 primary schools, 5 middle schools, 3 high schools, 2 water treatment facilities, a hospital. And I know that TLC was down there, and I believe there was a recommendation to try to spare 2,400 acres of the 7,200 that were on the chopping block. And I know those sweet angelic people from the Haw River Assembly were down there, but otherwise, please correct me if I'm wrong, I didn't see any other environmental advocacy group of any kind down there making a stink. There were no symposia held by the Institute of the Environment at UNC, with Nicholas School of the Environment. The School of Urban Planning at UNC didn't show up, and it seems to me that this was simply conceded. It's just conceded by the environmental community. And I don't know what kind of hope, I'd like to hear more about your hope, Mr. Schlegel, because I think this is an absolute dystopian disaster that is well underway down there. And I think unless the environmental community can get together on this subject of development, that, and I'll end on this note, this is my little rant, that there's going to be really hard times ahead, really hard times ahead to find a landowner that's willing to donate a little bit of land along the stream or something like that. So I'll end, and specifically, there's this $2 billion state referendum coming up next March. They're calling it infrastructure. It sounds like I haven't read much on it. It sounds like a really bad deal for the environment. So I'm just hoping that, particularly, I can't talk to these higher level Ms. Sweitzer advocacy group people. I start moving my hands around, and people think I'm angry, and they tell me, oh, go see the Earth First people there. They're the edgy ones. And so if you can get together, maybe some of you who work at universities and higher places, and let's take a closer look at this referendum and development in general, that'd be good for the environment. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, that would be. I think there are a lot of regional issues that need to be looked at, and Chatham Park is going to really change that area a lot.
I find it interesting that you said that your impression was that there were no environmental advocacy organizations sort of speaking out forcefully. I would have expected that to have been the case.
I was looking at it from, I'm always concerned about the agriculture. I was thinking about land. I don't know what point in time you Snapchat, but I guess those of us who own listservs and other things, I think there was more conversations going on about it. But me being awake, again, it's you know, it's not something I crossed the line, but I was very, I noticed a lot of conversations. So I don't know if you saw one Snapchat in time where you didn't feel like folks were speaking up. But on my side of, at least from the agriculture and the loss of ag land and other things, forest lands and things, a lot of conversations go around. It doesn't mean we may necessarily convene or have the power to do something about it. But maybe it's because we do it 24 hours a day, it feels like some days. We do it all day at work. Maybe we hear a lot more things. I don't know. I felt like it was more conversations going on than none, but that's just. Let's convene then. Yeah. Anytime you get some wolf pack together, I'm good.
We have time for a cup. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to thank you for your passion. I think it takes a lot of heart. I mean, I think you're showing a lot of heart, and I think that is really necessary. And I heard one of the speakers talk about the impact that one person can have. So I want to thank you for your passion. And my kind of understanding of Chatham Park and the development pressures that it is putting on the town of Pittsboro, I really only know it from the water utility perspective. And the town of Pittsboro is one of the members of the Jordan Lake Partnership, and their water demand curve is the steepest among those 13 utilities, and they've really been wrestling with what that means, but also been thinking about what opportunities that provides. I think we will see through the Chatham Park development some expansion of water reuse infrastructure in this region, and so kind of making lemonade out of lemons, if you will. I think some of the things that they're planning to do within Chatham Park related to reusing wastewater, recycling water, actually will set the bar fairly high when it comes to water supply. But I recognize that's just kind of one perspective on that, so thank you.
It's a glimmer. Yeah, so one more question?
I'd like to ask maybe two questions, but one is, you talked about how these communities were really starting to be concerned about these things. Do you know of any single case where a city government has given priority to water catchment preservation over development? Given priority to water catchment preservation, in other words, protecting forest rather than having it developed? It seems to me they always say we don't have enough money to protect these forests.
I think a really interesting example of a city securing water quality and also preserving open space. Oh, there are a lot of impoundments involved at the same time as New York City with the Catskills. And I see a lot of parallels between that and the situation in northern Durham and the Raleigh water supply. So that they did not do that, and this was done a century ago, Laura, I think, in many cases. They didn't really do this to preserve open space. They did it to secure a water supply, but if you've been to the Catskills, you know, they also restricted development in a very large area of land. So I think there are ways you can do this, and as I said, I see a possible parallel with parts of the Triangle and Raleigh particularly. So it's something to think about.
Well, the City of Raleigh and the Upper Neuse River Clean Water Initiative has been instrumental in TLC's ability to do land conservation in Durham and Orange counties. And I encourage you to speak to Leanne Hammerbacher, who's in the back there, who has worked for TLC and the City of Raleigh. And then I think the City of Raleigh folks are out there. And I really think that that is a great model because they understand the connection, and that's been really helpful. So.
There's been more. City of Asheville with CTNC and some others.
Yeah.
There's been a lot.
Not enough.
Well, I don't know about Durham up out here.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank the speakers once again for coming and sharing with us. That was great. And so there's some awesome food out there. There's more beer to be had. These folks are going to stick around. I encourage you to talk with them more. If you have additional questions, please feel free to talk to them and keep the conversation going. And I want to encourage you, if you're not yet a member of the Triangle Land Conservancy, to join. We are having, I don't want you to think that we only drink beer, but we are having a happy hour at Bottle 501 in Durham on November 20th. So it's a members only event. And if you're not a member, it's a great time to join and come out. And we have a lot of hikes too. There's no beer at the hikes. They're on the table out there. You can find maps of our preserves and also a list of events that we have. So thank you again so much, and we'll keep talking. I don't know how to turn that off. Thanks. That was great. Is this one? This off? Yes, great. You know how many times I get
Larry Dan, my boss, says, and you know the founder of the New Deal is so